For centuries, humanity pushed the boundaries of life. One day, those boundaries disappeared entirely. Biotechnology advanced to the point where humans could become immortal. The greatest scientists on Earth developed a technology that biologically renewed the human body, rendering death obsolete. At first, this miraculous breakthrough seemed like a great victory for humanity. Over time, this new generation of immortals became a powerful force in the galaxy. However, for the other civilizations in the galaxy, this development was deeply concerning. The idea of humans living forever threatened the balance of power. Immortality made humans bolder, more ruthless in battle, and more selfish in the political arena. Believing they could conquer the entire galaxy, a group of human leaders began expanding their influence to other planets. One of these outer planets, the Drydox Empire, decided to stop humanity's menacing rise. The ruler of Drydox formed an interplanetary alliance to assemble an army against the humans. But the humans, confident in their technological superiority, prepared for a massive war against this alliance. Leading the humans was a commander named Samuel. Samuel had fought in numerous near-death battles and, after undergoing the immortality process, had become one of the galaxy's most experienced soldiers. He was known for his strategic brilliance and his ability to turn the tide of battle in his favor. The Drydox army, now united with allies from across the galaxy, prepared for the final confrontation to defend the galaxy against the threat of human immortality. A great clash between the two forces was now inevitable. When Samuel and his army reached the borders of the Drydox Empire, the sight before them was breathtaking. Warships gathered from all corners of the galaxy formed a massive, interlocked defensive line. As always, Drydox's powerful leader Zarina had prepared with a forward-thinking strategy, waiting for the right moment to unleash the new weapons designed to destroy human immortality. Standing in the command center of his ship, Samuel stared at the immense fleet ahead without a moment of hesitation. "Everyone, take your positions. We are attacking," he said calmly. His eyes were filled with the drive to win this war, no matter the cost. The Immortals had never returned from a battle defeated, and this time would be no different. The human ships surged forward toward the Drydox fleet. In the silent void of space, massive plasma cannons fired from the human ships, trailing behind them. Lasers pierced through shields, delivering lethal blows to the enemy line. Samuel carefully monitored his fleet's leaders, ensuring every move was executed flawlessly. The forces of Drydox quickly recovered from the initial shock. On Zarina's command, they launched a counterattack. The Allied ships swiftly changed direction and charged toward the human ships like a bolt of lightning. Both sides were locked in a deadly dance with destruction. Each ship that exploded was consumed by the infinite darkness of the galaxy. Samuel's ship made a bold maneuver to break through the enemy ranks. With shields flickering in front of them, they advanced fearlessly toward the enemy. His warriors pushed their limits, fueled by the confidence that immortality gave them. But Drydox's technology was far more formidable than anticipated. One of the Drydox ships locked onto Samuel's warship. When plasma cannons struck the shields, the ship shook violently. The command center trembled, and the lights flickered momentarily. But Samuel never panicked. "Stabilize the shields. Return fire," he shouted. The laser cannons on the front of the ship fired back, obliterating the enemy vessel, but more enemies were starting to surround them. Meanwhile, Zarina began to sense victory aboard her command ship. Strategically, she had cornered the humans. But that wasn't enough. She wanted to completely annihilate Samuel and his army. The special weapons developed by Drydox scientists were finally ready. These weapons were powerful enough to neutralize the biotechnology that made humans immortal. "Commence the attack," Zarina ordered coldly. With a signal from her ship, the entire Drydox fleet began firing the special weapons. Plasma waves, glowing ominously in the darkness, moved toward Samuel's fleet. Unlike the others, these weapons didn't just target the ships physically but also disabled their biotechnological systems. In other words, they carried the power to break human immortality. Human ships started to struggle against this new weapon. Some of the immortal soldiers inside began to feel weak all of a sudden. The biotechnological systems in their bodies were gradually shutting down, and their immortality was at risk. For the first time, they started to feel the limits of their invincibility. Panic began to spread through the ranks. When Samuel realized what was happening, he immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. The enemy had developed a technology capable of nullifying immortality. The war was now not only military but also biological. Samuel's calm demeanor never wavered, but he knew they needed more to win this battle. "Bring the reserve forces forward immediately," he commanded with a strategic move. "We will continue the attack without retreat. No one falls back." However, the tide of the war was no longer in their control. Zorina's weapons were closing in on Samuel's army. Human ships with weakened shields crashed into enemy lines, but they were taking heavier losses each time. The Drydock's army had prepared for what would be the galaxy's final great war. Samuel realized he had no choice but to launch a direct assault on Zorina's ship. This battle would end with a confrontation between the two leaders. "Target Zorina's ship," he instructed his commanders. "The only way to end this war is to take her down." As his ship sped toward Drydock's command vessel, Samuel reflected on how everything they had gained through immortality had actually made them more fragile. The fate of the war now rested in his hands. As Samuel's ship navigated through the heart of the Drydock's fleet, the battle outside raged with full intensity. Samuel's strategic move was a direct attack on the enemy's flagship. Zorina's command ship, the heart of Drydock's, was the stronghold that would determine the fate of immortal humanity. However, this was a desperate gamble. Enemy forces had surrounded them on all sides. Inside the ship, the crew was doing their best under extreme conditions. Explosions echoed through the corridors, but the discipline under Samuel's command remained unshaken. "Maximize the shields. Prepare for attack," Samuel said, keeping his composure. In that moment, he realized that the very power of immortality that had once made them invincible now left them vulnerable. For years, they had believed in their invincibility, but their enemy had turned immortality into a weapon against them. Following Samuel's orders, the ship's weapon systems reactivated. As plasma cannons fired again, the ship shuddered more violently as it neared the enemy lines. Drydock's defense ships were attacking Samuel's ship from all sides, but despite the severe hits to the shields, the ship pressed forward. Every attack pushed them closer to their limits, but retreat was not an option. The Drydock's flagship stood like a giant in the dark, its energy barriers nearly impenetrable. Zorina had anticipated Samuel's direct assault and equipped her ship with the strongest defense systems. But Samuel was humanity's last hope. He could not turn back without winning this battle. Everyone on board waited for one final command. When Samuel looked around, he didn't see fear on the faces of his crew but determination. "This battle is for the future of humanity," Samuel said, his voice firmer than ever. "We're going to launch an all-out attack on the flagship." There was a moment of silence. Then Samuel's ship unleashed all its cannons on Zorina's ship. The deafening sound of explosions echoed through space as blue and white beams of light collided with the enemy's shields, straining their defenses. But Zorina's ship was far more resilient than expected. The blasts hit the shields but couldn't fully break through. Meanwhile, Samuel noticed his ship was taking more and more damage. The Drydock ships had cornered them. At the same time, in her command center, Zorina watched Samuel's attacks with cold confidence. A faint smirk appeared on her lips. "Humans may be immortal," she whispered to herself, "but that won't change their fate." Her scientists reported that the weapons designed to disrupt Samuel's army's biotechnology were ready. Zorina had found Samuel's greatest weakness, his reliance on their immortality. As Samuel realized that breaking through the enemy's defenses was impossible, he knew he had to come up with another plan. Just then, a signal from within the ship indicated that their biotech systems were failing. His crew members were weakening one by one, their immortality vanishing. Samuel turned to his officers with a final hope. "The last resort," he said in a heavy tone. "We're going to execute a direct collision with the enemy ship." It was a suicide mission, but there was no other option left. Divert all power to the ship. Drop the shields. Full speed ahead for the collision. With this command, everyone took a deep breath. Samuel's plan was to break through the Drydock's defense barrier by sacrificing their own ship and taking down the enemy flagship. All energy was redirected from the shields to the weapon systems and engines. The ship, now speeding towards the enemy flagship, endured heavy fire as enemy shots hit its hull. Explosions rocked the ship, and pieces of metal were torn off, but the ship kept speeding forward. Samuel remained seated in the command chair, cold and composed. This was his destiny. He believed that by making this final move against Zarina, they would save humanity from the galactic chaos. As the Drydock's flagship realized Samuel's ship was hurtling towards them, they reactivated their defense systems. But Samuel's ship was too fast. Despite enemy fire, it stayed on course. The outer layers of the ship started to disintegrate. Fires broke out in the internal sections, but Samuel pressed on, determined to make this final play to decide the outcome of the war. With one final explosion, Samuel's ship crashed into the Drydock's flagship at full speed. A massive explosion erupted in space. Both ships were consumed in the blast. The Drydock's fleet hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. After the explosion, Zarina's ship was shattered. With their leader gone, the Drydock's forces plunged into chaos. Samuel and his crew had sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy. After the explosion, the remaining human ships quickly pushed back the Drydock's forces. Samuel's leadership and bravery had sealed the fate of the war. Samuel's name would be remembered as a hero throughout the galaxy. The price of immortality had been steep, but through that sacrifice, a new balance had been restored in the galaxy. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye, see you in the next story.